This video is a part of a free chapter from my new course, The Blendinator. Click the links in the description to learn more. In the last video, we took our circle masks, put them into the compositor, and with standard compositing techniques, we started to remove the markers on my face. However, since my situation is a little bit different, the standard techniques weren't able to take us all the way, and so this video I'm going to show you some more advanced techniques that you can do to solve some of the problems. But the in-paint method works the best when you just have somebody's face that doesn't really move and is kind of just looking straight towards the camera. But when you have footage like this where my head is moving all over the place, then you'll most likely need to use a couple different methods to remove markers on different spots. And so we're going to actually talk about the next one, and that is the beard problem that we have here, because the in-paint and blurring stuff works well on skin, but not so well on facial hair. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this mask. We're just going to use the 3D mask from now on. And then I am going to copy all of these nodes here right before the in-paint node. Then I'm going to Shift D to duplicate those, bring those down, and we'll plug this one in here. And I want to get this back to where we have the holes in the face, so we need to switch this back to Apply Mask. There we go. So for this method, what I want to do is I want to place the original footage behind the one with the cutout holes and then move it a little bit. So what we can do is add in another alpha overnode, and this one is going to be on top. So we want the cookie cutter one to be on top, having the holes shine through to the bottom image, which is now white, but we can plug in our original footage to that. Of course, at this stage, doesn't look like anything has changed, but with this, let's bring this down to have a little more room. And this time, instead of a blur node, let's add in a distort transform. Plug that right in here. And then if we're just looking at the beard, these four right here on the beard, we can come in here and drag the Y down. And as we drag it down, you can see we're just moving the bottom image down. And so all we're doing is just this. We're drag that down. We can go up and down. We can go left and right with this. So that's the bottom image. And then we have the image with our holes on the top, and the holes stay in the same place. So when the bottom image moves down, you can see it just moving down to where there's more hair. And if we go down far enough, you can see we've eliminated all of that blue, and we've still kept the hair so it doesn't look like it's all blurry and unnatural. And we may even be able to get away with blurring this a little bit more. And that looks pretty good, especially at a distance here. Of course, again, just with the beard, it doesn't work with the whole thing, as you can see, which is why in our situation, we need to use several different methods. And what we can do actually is come over and combine the two using both our in-paint and our transform. If we combine these, if we do another alpha overnode, just like we have been, and combine these, it's not going to work because you can see the factor, we can either do one or the other. So a factor of 1 or 0, so we can switch back and forth between them, or maybe 0.5 to try to get best of both worlds. And that really isn't going to help us in this situation. And since they're using the same mask, plugging any sort of mask into the factor isn't going to help us. So we need to isolate only the points on the beard that we want to use the transform method, and then everything else will use the in-paint method. So there are a couple different ways to isolate the circles here. Let's start with the hardest and most tedious, as we did before in our 2D masking. What we can do is let's enable spline and disable our overlay. If we come up to this button, we can click to create a new mask. I'm going to title this Mask Beard. And now we can come up here and collapse this. We don't see it down here yet because we haven't added a spline yet. So let's shift right click and add in our circle. And now we have our mask beard because now we have a mask layer under that. And this is where any keyframe animations are going to go. So on frame 540, since my face is turned to the side, let's turn our patterns on so we can see this. I want to deselect all of them. So let's go to our motion tracking here and then double tap A to deselect them and then come back here. What I need to do is just place this around all 4 of them in a way that we can use this information to isolate just these 4. And if you remember, we can designate each point to be parented to one of these here. So this one down here, I'm going to select this one to parent, and we can say parent. Oh, and I didn't select that. Let's try that again. Oh, see, we got proximity thing here. So I'm going to select this first and then drag this over. And now we can parent that. Let's pull this one over here. So we got 4 points and we got 4 trackers. So this one will be parented to that one. And then this one will be parented to that one. And then lastly, this one here. But I'm going to select everything, I, to add in a keyframe. And here's our first keyframe. Then we can turn on auto keying. And then we'd have to do the same thing that we did, this process of adding all of these keyframes as we babysit it. Mainly what we want to do is make sure that it doesn't overlap any of the other markers. So maybe something like that. And then we can watch it. I'm going to duplicate this. Remember, when you duplicate here, you have to press G also to grab. And so this is what you would have to do, just like we did before, and babysit it through the whole thing. Actually, we need to have this one down over that here. And then here. Okay, that's better. I'm going to rekey this shape here. So just double tap A, and then on this frame, we're just going to select this one, and then I'm going to do rekey shape points so that that doesn't change all that much. It still does a little bit, but that's okay. We can reset that. Okay, so I'm not going to do the whole thing. You get the picture here. We're just animating the mask as we go along. And of course, don't forget to save it. So now we can come to the compositing and we can use that information here along with our 3D mask. So because the 3D mask is generally the same as the 2D mask, this will work because we've got those 4 on those trackers right there. So let's just bring this down so we have a little bit more room to work with, kind of show you what's going on here. So to create a black and white mask here, what we can do is get our alpha over. Now I'm just going to duplicate this one. And we want this to be on top. And then the bottom image is going to be our black. And now for the factor, this is where we add in our mask. But this time we're going to choose mask beard. And this feather, it doesn't really matter if we check this or not because we actually didn't use the feather. That would only be if we were using the feather here, remember, by Alt-S and scaling that out, but we're not doing that. So we don't need to worry about that. Anyway, we can take the mask beard and then plug it into the factor. And now it's saying that everywhere the mask beard is, which is this area here, we're going to use that information to say this is the only area we will allow the circles to be shown. And then we put it over a black background. Because remember, the factor affects the bottom image, which is this. Okay, so that is one way to isolate those. So now that we have that isolated, let's pull these back up over here. And this is going to be our new mask. So we're just going to plug this into where our original mask was. And now we can just plug that in over here, which just from this is correct because it's not affecting any of the other ones. This is the transform that we used where we pulled everything down, and we can use it just like this. So I think -60 actually looks pretty good on that. Okay, so now what we can do is plug this one back in, and the factor, if we bring to 0, it's going to be the full in paint, and then 1 is now our modified only beard, but we're still running into the same issue. So we need to plug something into the factor. And that is going to be just our the mask that we have here. So we're basically telling the bottom image, which is our beard stuff, that it's only going to be using the beard information. So we're going to plug that into the factor. And now we have the bottom image using the beard mask and the top image using the regular mask or the other mask. And now we have a combination of the two. So we have the in paint up here, and then we have the beard move down here. So I want to see what this looks like at 490. And remember, with this, again, we have to press F12 to have that refresh. And that's looking so much better. But because this is very tedious and we're going to have to babysit it, there, of course, is a better way to do this, and that is also involving our 3D layout. So the 3D is the way to go. Let's hide this lattice here. What we can do is use the RGB colors to create our own separate channels for each of these. So I'm going to select this one here. Let's go to the material and then scroll up. I'm going to click this number button to make its own copy. So it basically just duplicates it and renames it. I'm going to title this red, and then we'll just make this red. I'm going to go to RGB actually to make this precise. Just bring the green and the blue all the way down. So red is at 1. And then I'm going to circle select these here. Right click to cancel the circle selection after you're finished. And then Control L to link materials. So we're not done yet, but let's go back to compositing to show you what will happen in this instance. So let's go ahead and F12. Okay. And then if I plug this in, you can see here is our result, which looks exactly like how we set it up in the 3D view. And so to isolate the red, you would think that you could just add in a separate color, plug this in and make sure that's RGB, and then we would get red, but we don't. And if I switch to green, you can see, well, these are gone now. And if I switch to blue, same thing. And then alpha is going to be everything. So what's happening here? Well, you may know that the color white is a combination of all colors because it is the reflection of all of the wavelengths of visible light. So all of the white is reflecting red, green, and blue all at the same time. So it is included in there. And this took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out because I didn't know what the problem was. And the reason when we go to green, we don't see these is because these are red and they aren't reflecting the green wavelengths or the blue wavelengths. So there is no green or blue here, but the red is reflecting red here, but so are all of these. They're reflecting all of the colors. So what we need to do is come back to our layout and then choose all of the white circles and change the color to something else. Let's hide this camera to get it out of our way. And I'm going to go into tweak mode. And I'm just going to select one of these here and then come to select linked, and then material, and then it's going to select all the ones with the same white material. We're going to do the same thing, click this button, blue, and then we're going to do the same thing here, except for red is going to be 0 and green is going to be 0. And of course we've only changed one, so with all of them still selected, Control L to link those materials. And now let's go back to compositing and see what we have. Let's do an F12 again, and ta-da, we now have only those that are reflecting red being shown. So this is how we can isolate that. We can also select blue, which are all of these, apart from this. And there is now nothing currently reflecting green. So with the red selected, we can come up over here and we can get rid of the 2D mask, plug our red right in there, and then instead of this over here, which is using all of them, we're going to use the blue. So we take the blue and plug that in here, and then we can just get rid of this. And so this one is using the blue for the in paint, and this one is using the red. Oh, and I plugged that into the wrong one. We got to plug it into the image. There we go. The red for the beard. And then when we plug these in together, we still need to use the bottom mask for the bottom image into the factor, and we get the same result. So we've just achieved the same thing that we did, except for we are using fully the 3D view instead of any of the 2D masking, which good riddance, in my opinion. Now I think I might be able to add this circle on the chin here to the red category, and that's obviously very easy. So come back to the layout, select the chin, and we're gonna just choose red. Then come back here, we can press F12, and that should automatically update for us. Maybe a little bit too strange, but it's not far off from what my beard currently looks like. So I do have this white growing in around on the sides. So glancing at it like this doesn't look all that obvious. And of course, the advantage to doing it all 3D is now we don't have to animate that mask. So we can do from any angle here. Of course, we don't have this side yet. That's still using the blurred in painted footage. But if we come over to different frames here, we can kind of just check them out. And you may even want to use the same beard method for the ones that you know are going to be pulling information from the background. So like the two on the nose, we could isolate those. We've got another channel we can use as the green. Let's just do that as demonstration. So let's take these two. And then we don't have green yet, so I'm going to make another copy. We'll say green and change this to our green. Control L to link materials and then come back. And actually what we can do, we can test, since we already have a transform, we can test that with the red instead first. So let's just change this to red for just a moment. And then let's see what that does if we refresh here. Okay, that doesn't really help us because we can see our footage looks like this. So we do need to transform, but we need to transform it in a different way. So we will need to have these, use that green again. And then essentially what we want to do is copy this here and then have this green come in to the blurred image here. And then we can take our movie clip footage here into the transform, which gives us the same result because this is a duplicated transform. Oh, we have to plug this in here. Oh, I plugged in the wrong one here. Let's plug this one straight away into that. There we go. So we've got the apply mask, which doesn't seem to be working with the green for some reason. Did we not refresh that? There we go. Okay. Okay, so now we've got the holes there, and we can actually probably drop this down to 5 for the blur. There we go. And then plug this in. Okay, so now we can actually reset this. If we select it and then press backspace, it will reset it to its default values. And then we can start playing around with pulling this down. So what we want to do is kind of pull it down like this, but then pull it over on the X axis. Maybe 18. There we go. So now we're just doing the same method that we did with the beard, but we're just using a different transform, using a different isolated color channel, which is our green, just these two. And we have it blurred just a little bit less. And then that cuts out our image there, and then we put the original image beneath it, and then we move it down and over. So it's covering more of this portion of the nose. And now it's not using the in paint, and it's not pulling that information from the background. So let's now take these, and we can use another alpha over node, or a faster way to do this is to use a mix node. And if you're using the Node Wrangler add-on, all you have to do is press and hold Control Shift and then right click to drag between the two, and then it will mix them for us. So this will be on the top, this will be on the bottom, which is what we want. But we need, of course, this mask here, the bottom mask for the bottom. Remember, the factor always affects the bottom socket. All right, so now we have 3 different settings for 3 different sections of our circle masks, and that is starting to look pretty good. This is already so much better. So here is our original footage. And here is what we've done so far. I mean, from here you can't really tell that we have blue stuff on our face, maybe down here. But all of this is a big giant mess, so let's organize this a little bit here. We have duplicated footage things here, so let's kind of organize this. We just want one footage and one mask here with our different channels. And then this one here. On the top, I'm gonna box select these and press Control J to join them into a box. And if I hover over the top, I can click and drag and move those around. And if I press N, I can rename this in Paint. And then this teeny tiny text right down there, but we can actually open up the properties, and I like to put the label size at 40 because then that's a little bit easier to see. And if we wanted to, we can change the color. The in Paint looks maybe a little bit more like this. We'll say that's the in Paint, like it's a blurred in Paint. And then for the beard, we can do the same thing, but let's see. Where is that here? I need to separate these. Okay, so this is all down here with that one. This one is up here with this one. I'm going to actually take this one, and if I select it and press Alt-P, then it's going to separate it from the group. I like to have the alpha overs or the mixes separate from that, because this technically right here is the in Paint. And then this one, we'll do Control J. Same thing, this will be 40, and then this will be beard. And I used to have more of a red-ish beard, so we're gonna just pretend I still have a little bit more of a bright red beard. And there we go. And then these here are gonna be the nose, and say nose. Oh, whoops, wrong one. Which one did I have selected? Okay, let's Control J. We'll say nose, and then maybe brownish color, brown nosing. Then bring that up to 40. Okay, and then we have them all mixed together like this. Sometimes these are a little bit difficult to select. Okay, let's make this a little bit more clear. You know what we can do? Hover our mouse over here, press Control Spacebar, and that will make this area full screen, and then we can see it a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to take, I guess, this and plug that into here. We can get rid of that. And this doesn't look terrible. What you can do to make it a little bit cleaner if you wanted to, if you press and hold down Shift and then right click, you can drag in another socket, and then we can just grab this by pressing G, and then we can kind of straighten that out. So that's kind of going straight into that. We can do the same thing for all of these here, just so we can see it a lot clearer where the sockets are being connected. This one doesn't really need it because it's straight on there. And this one we can pretty clearly see that, so we don't really need that either. Okay, so this is actually a lot more clean than we had it. So let's go back and don't forget to save it. Now I'm not going to actually go over how to do every single mask and isolation of all of these circles. You're just going to have to look at your footage to see what makes sense, and you can see actually, which we haven't checked yet, is having that straight on the nose. So real quick to fix this, you just need to add keyframes, and we can add keyframes to the transform. This is the nose here. That's why we so aptly labeled these. But we want on frame 540. This is okay. So let's put keyframes by hovering here and pressing I on both of those. But when it's facing straight on, we're going to need to do a different location, obviously, because this looks terrible. So let's just bring these back down to 0 first, which is what we would expect here. And then what happens if we go down? Just straight down. Okay. Yeah, that doesn't look terrible. kind of looks a little bit meh. What if we just went straight one way or the other this way? Okay, that's obviously a lot more terrible. Okay, so we can't do that. What if we went up? So it looks like the only way is down. So about negative 25 or negative 30. That's about as good as we're going to get. And we accidentally still had auto keying on, which helped us in this situation, but be careful when you have that on. So now we can see on frame 490 and then 540. That should look okay, but let's see what happens like in the middle. So that still doesn't look all that good there. So we may need to eventually come up with a rig to where it switches back and forth between the masks. So it will be using the transform mask here when it's looking to the side, but then when it's looking straight on, it would use the in-paint mask. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with it and get a good setup for every one of these circles. I'll group them how they should be, and I'll show you the final result. I'm not going to record everything that I'm going to do. You have all the principles now to be able to do what I'm doing. And of course, you'll have the final result that you can look at and analyze and tweak to your own liking as well. But I am going to show you one more thing, because you might be thinking, well, if we're only using red, green, and blue channels, we only have 3 options. So if you need to use more colors, and we will, there is a much more powerful way, and that is using the CryptoMatte view layer. So if we come back to layout, we can go to our view layer tab and then scroll down to CryptoMatte and click material. Now we could do object, but material is going to be easier in my opinion. And then let's just replace what we currently have here, the red, green, and blue, with our CryptoMatte instead. So go back to the compositing tab. We're going to press F12 again to re-render everything. And that's taking a long time. So what I'm going to do also is bring down my resolution by 2, just so that this renders faster. And we have to take our movie clip, press and hold Shift, and then right click to join those. And then right here, I'm going to put in a scale node and change this to render size. And we press F12 again. There we go. It's just going to help us to test things out a little bit more quickly. But now, if we come up here, you can see on our render layer, we have these new sockets called Crypto Material. And we only need one of them to do what we want to do. And what we want to do is Shift A to add in a CryptoMatte. And then we're going to plug in the 001 right in here into the image. And then if we just plug this one straight away into the image, we don't see anything. We also don't see anything in the matte because we need to pick one first. So I'm going to go here to pick. And now we have a sort of version of all of the materials in our scene. Now these are just placeholder materials. They don't actually represent the material colors that we have. But they're separated by materials, and we can select them by pressing this plus button and then using the eyedropper. You can see if I hover over, we can choose any of these materials. So I'm going to choose the blue material first because that is going to be the one coming out of our separate color up to the top. So I'm going to replace this one with our new CryptoMatte blue. We'll use matte. Actually, I'll show you what that looks like now. So now you can see that any of the blue ones we have right here, and the red and the green are excluded from that. So I'm going to take the matte and place that right into the image there. And if we come over here and check that out, it should work the same exact way. And it does. Okay, so let's pull this up here. The next one we need to replace is the red. So I'm going to duplicate this down. I'm going to use the same 00 CryptoMatte material. We're going to do a pickaroo. And if I click the button here and then click our red, I now have blue, red. So if we look at what that is, that's going to be the combination of the blue and the red. So what I need to do is take this and just delete that. And now I just have the red. And that is super useful. We can combine different CryptoMatte materials all together to create custom groups of them very quickly. This is why this is so powerful. Okay, so this is going to go replace the red. So we're going to bring the matte over here. And now we just need to replace the green, so we can duplicate this down, plug in our socket, do our pick, and that would be the nose, the ones on the nose. So I'm going to just delete this first, and then click plus, and then the green on the nose. Replace the green here with the matte. Well, let's just check. Yep, it's just the ones on the nose, and then we can plug that one right in there. So now we've essentially replaced everything from our separate color node, so we can just get rid of that and plug this in, and we should have the same result as we had before. And I'm going to reorganize this a little bit again. I'm going to combine these in here like this. Same thing with this. I'm going to just Control X to delete those, and then take these, and I'm just pressing and holding Shift down just to combine those so that it all moves with the container here. Just trying to keep everything nice and tidy. But now what this allows us to do is add as many materials as we want. So for example, with the left beard over here, which is these three, I can just select those and go to our material. And for the material, we're going to click this number here to make it its own copy. Instead of calling this a color, I'm going to call it what it is. So I'm going to say L beard for the left beard. And then we can just really assign any color. So maybe something like an orangish color. And then link those materials. And coming back to compositing, now we duplicate this out and plug it in like before. And now we have something else to pick, but we need to press F12 to refresh that again. And now you can see these are a different color. I hope you can see that. It's slightly different, but now we can pick this. If I scroll in, let's get rid of the green. Do the plus, and if we hover over here, you can see our L beard. So we're gonna click that. And the color doesn't even really matter because it's using the name as the ID. So we could have as many different colors, even if it's the same color. As long as it has a different name and it's separate, then it will use the designated ones. Okay, let's do our check. Okay. By the way, of course, with the Node Wrangler add-on, Control Shift, hold that and click, and that cycles through these. So that's what I'm doing there. Okay, so these are isolated now, and now we need to use this in another container. I'm going to take the beard container, Shift D to duplicate that down. And then this one up here, I'm going to select it and type R beard for the right beard, and then this one will be the L beard for the left beard. And we just need to plug in our perspective things. So just plug in our movie footage right here. And then the matte goes into the blur, and then we can plug that in and see what we have, and that looks pretty good there. Let's check. I'm going to check these other. This one isn't quite straight on. I'm going to move this actually. I think it's going to be, yeah, more like 495 is good. So I'm just going to delete this one and then add in another one here with M. M adds a marker. Oh, and I want to disable the auto keying here. Let's go to this though and F12 to refresh. Okay, that's not really the best here, so let's do. I think I had 30 here. Yeah. You can kind of see something a little bit there, but it's not that noticeable. And let's just check in betweens. Yeah, you can kind of see that there, but that is also probably because of our blur. So what we can do here, we can do a couple things. We can either change, you can see how the different calculations change. But I'm going to keep this on fast Gaussian, and what I can do is I can either bring this down like this. What I'm trying to go for is that it's not blurred in the middle, because the more I blur this, the blur goes outward and inwards. So if I put 20 here, you can see the middle isn't solid white. So we want kind of, I'm going to put this down to 8. So we want this more a solid white, and we can sort of achieve this by adding in a dilate erode node, plug that in right before it. I'm going to also drag it over into the box so that it stays in there. And this one can come out over this way. And if I increase the steps, you can see that more of the inside is white and the feather kind of stays on the outside. And then we can even bring this down a little bit more. There we go. So it's still feathered, but not as much inside. And let's see what we've achieved with that. Yes, so that makes it a lot better. I'm going to check it all the way through. We could also play around with the actual positioning of it. Let's do that. Let's just see. We can maybe take this and rotate it like so. Maybe we can make it smaller. Let's go to this and our X-ray, put our X-ray on. Maybe I can just pull that down and make it smaller. It may not work. No. What's happening is the one from above here, I think, is bleeding down into that one. I'm trying to avoid adding any keyframes if I can help it, but I don't think I'm going to be able to help it because we need to have this go down far further. And you know what? I'm not even going to worry about it because it's not worth the trouble to add any more keyframes. If this works for everything else, I'm just going to keep it like that. It's barely noticeable. And if you're not looking for it, you're not going to find it. Of course, what you can do if you wanted to is the beauty of this method. We can just select this one, which actually I'm going to probably make larger anyway. We just select this one, make it its own material, and move it wherever we need to. And you can do that for any of these. You can separate them into however many groups, however many works for your scene, and that's basically what I'm going to have to do in order to get everything looking right. So for example, let's see, let's go back over here. For these here on the side of the face, I'm going to need to separate those out. But first, let's add all these together. Okay, so we plug this one in, and then Shift D to duplicate that, plug that in and bring it down. It's just the easiest way that I found to do this. Plug this one into the bottom, and then grab our blur and plug that one into the factor. And now we have all of them together like this. You can sort of see the blue here, but I'm not really concerned about that. What I am concerned about is when my face turns the other way, right here, this is still using the in-paint node, and you can see it starts to pull that information from the background, and I don't like that. And when my head is turning, you can definitely see that in the video, that these sort of change colors here. So what I'm going to do is come back out here and then take these. I think I'm going to take these two and separate them out. We'll say L cheek for left cheek, and then 1. Just choose, you know, any random color. Control L is to link those materials. L cheek 2. And then come back to compositing. And now we have 2 more that we can link up. And I can just duplicate this down. We'll put another socket here so we can plug that one in straight away. And this we need to pick. So this is going to be these 2 right here, we'll say. So let's go ahead and get rid of the L beard. we pick the blue? Oh, that still says blue. Whoops. Let's F12 to refresh that. And now we have different ones. Delete that. Add in L cheek 1. And then of course we can change this. I can actually come over here, L cheek 1, and copy this color. If I want to be really precise, L cheek 1. Okay, and then we need to plug this in for our footage, and then that should now give us our transform tool here, which we can reset, and then figure out which way is best to have these transformed. And of course we can mess with the dilate erode nodes here, figure out the perfect blur settings. And this is all going to be based on your footage, and you might have to make some more keyframes here. And the reason we have to do all of this tedious work right now is because we have big blue dots on our face. So the moral of the story here is don't put big blue dots on your face for this. Just use small black dots. That's going to be your best bet. You're not going to have nearly as much trouble trying to remove them as we are here. But this is how I would go about doing it. And you might have to do a lot of babysitting here with the keyframes, especially when it comes to the nose kind of overlapping that, because it's still pulling from the image. So you can also do other things too. If you still use the in-paint node for these, then what we could do is potentially use a RGB curves here to darken that. You might even have to separate these two individually to find a good spot for each of them individually. But that is how you do this, and we put it all together. Again, we want to plug this one in, duplicate this, pull this down, plug this one in, and then grab the blur and plug it into the factor. And now we have all of those together. The nose looks like it maybe needs a little bit of work. Maybe, I think what I had, if we select this, we can see the keyframes. I think what I had is, I think I changed this to -15 and then add that keyframe there. I think I'm going to do the same thing. I'm thinking I'm going to duplicate this over like that. And I should probably open to see both the X and the Y here. Maybe copy this. Maybe copy this dilate erode node here. Oh, and then to get rid of that, Alt P. So then we can plug it in here. Oh yeah, that looks a little bit better. So anyway, now you can see we have a much more powerful way to isolate the dots on our face, which is going to allow us to manipulate them, move them, animate them in a way that we can fully remove these big blue dots on our face. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because this is going to probably take quite a while to get just right, but I'll show you the final results when we're done. And another thing that you can do to save some time is, since we are going to be adding our CG skull here on the right side of my face, we don't really have to remove that because the CG is going to cover all of those. So that plays into our advantage. Another thing that plays into the advantage is we don't have the same problem over here with the in-paint when our face is looking this way, because that's where the light is coming from. So the in-paint node is actually just pulling the light, and since we have a white background, we don't really even need to mask those out. So these can all, I think, stay in the in-paint. It's just the darker side of the face over here, when it starts to turn this way, it starts to pull from that light background, and that's why we get a lot of that going. The nose is going to be a little tough to figure out. It's going to have to be a lot of manual work and keyframes. So I'll try to figure that out, try to get rid of all of the markers so we have at least somewhat of a clean look. It's not going to be perfect, but when I'm done, I'll show you the final result, and you'll also have the blend file that you can look to diagnose everything that I've done, all the keyframes, all the setup and everything. Okay, and so I finally think I've got a good working node setup here, and you can see that it's got, for the most part, everything removed that we need to on all of the keyframes. So that is looking pretty good here. It's not perfect. There's some minor issues, but I'm going to leave those in case you want to go in and see if you can fix those up by tweaking them a little bit. But let me show you here what I've done. So let's go to our layout. I'll show you how I've broken these down. You're familiar with all of this here, but if I turn my head this way, you can see I've got a lot more colors here. If I select this, you can see the name over here, L Beard. That's these two, which you know, but I separated this one out because this one looked really weird. It looks like a little circle cut in my beard there. So I just put L Beard low. I also broke up the cheek here. So the cheek is, this is L cheek 1, both of these, and this is L cheek 2, and this is L cheek 3, because trying to move both of those at the same time didn't work. It was much better by itself. These two are L temple, and this is L forehead low, these two, and these two are L forehead high. And I think I was able to make it work with just those because, like I said, with all the blue here, the blue is the in paint. If I select this, I still have it as blue. I could change the names of those to make it consistent, but it's just more work, and I don't really care to do that. So we've got the red, which is the right beard, and then the green, which is the nose. So then combining all of those together, going to compositing, here is our node setup. I'm going to go straight down the line and show you everything that I've done. Hover over here, press Control Spacebar to make this full screen, and we'll start at the top. So this is the beginning, what we've already worked on, so you already know all of this. In paint, the right beard, the nose, and with the nose we have these keyframes. If I select this, you can see the keyframes. Actually, maybe this isn't the best for showing the keyframes, so let me go here. We'll drag this out, and just so we have the keyframes down here, but make this a little bit easier to see. So if we select this, you can see the keyframes down here only show selected. If I uncheck that, it's going to show all the keyframes, and you can see all the keyframes down here. You can see the scene, composite, nose. If we open up all of these drop downs, you can see all of our keyframes at once. Unless we have this checked, then we can see just the keyframes of the node we have selected. And then I'm going to even just collapse it so we just see the summary, because that's really all we need to see. But you can see where those keyframes are. I'm not going to go through all of the frame range, but you can just see that I've made it to where whether I look left or right, it matches up. Okay, then we go to our left beard, which let's go over this way. Left beard is going to be this here. So the top two here. And you can see down here, this is our L beard low, which we'll get to in a little bit, but that's what I changed. It looked like a circle there. It still, you can see it's copied this, but it still looks better, I think, than the cutout circle. I don't have any keyframes, just the dilate erode node and the blur settings, which I also have up here. And just keep going down, no keyframes there. Here, what I did was a color balance. So I copied the in paint. So this is actually a copy from this in paint, no, way up here. And this is for the, what is this? I still have in paint here, but I think this is for the L cheek 1, which I should just rename to L cheek 1. It's kind of hard to see with the color and everything. But if I mute this, you'll be able to see like the discoloration, especially if I'm looking over here. And if I select this one, we have keyframes as well, and I'll go over that in just a second. But if we have this here, so this is using the in paint, which again is pulling the background color. And so if I unmute that, you can see I've actually just recolored those. I just plugged it in a color balance straight from where the movie clip comes in, right before it's plugged into the image in the set alpha. And then I just adjusted these colors. So I kind of gave it a little bit more of a flesh color with the gamma and the gain. And I may or may not have also pulled this down to make it darker. You can kind of see that, and that, maybe even looks a little bit better. But when you do this, here you can set a keyframe in each one of these. So I set a keyframe here. So I sets a keyframe for all of those. Then I Shift D to duplicate that and pull that all the way over here so that it looks like that for the remainder of my head turning, which my nose is covering it anyway, so it doesn't really matter all that much going this way. But then, you know, you have it over here. And, you know, that doesn't look too bad. Let's go in the middle here. So that might look a little bit too light there still in the middle. So what I may end up doing is pull this over all the way like this. Oh yeah, that looks like that helps a little bit. But again, far away, it doesn't look terrible. And again, if you want to tweak any of this stuff to make it look even better, I'll let you do that. And just kind of looking in between, kind of maybe going 10 frames by 10 frames, checking to see what we have. And so it's going to lighten up here a little bit when I look forward because it was too dark looking forward, but when my head turns, then it was too light. So that's what this is compensating for. Okay, moving on, we have L cheek 2. I have similar color balance here, but I don't know if I even used this color balance. It doesn't look like I put keyframes on there. If I mute this here, it doesn't here, so I think it's because I just copied it from this one, but didn't add any keyframes. But here we've got our transform. I transformed it in the way that just that one should. You see it's just the single one there. I'm just going to make this 20. I think that worked for the entire way. So that's good because I try to avoid adding keyframes where possible. And then I duplicated it again, and I don't think this one is using the color balance too. So technically I could just get rid of these. So just Control X and then Control X because that's not those aren't being used. But I did have to add a keyframe here. But it didn't look like it was too bad, so just added a keyframe on 490, and I think it's because when I turn my head to the right, it didn't quite line up because you could see a little blue, and you can still sort of see a little blue there. So I just had to bump it down to 30. That was more so over here, so I just bumped it down to 30 when I was looking this way, just so I didn't see any more. Okay, and then moving on, so that's the second block here. And the reason I broke it up into these blocks is so that all of these node connections weren't like running from one source all the way down. So I just duplicated the render layer and the movie clip so that was down here so that we didn't have all this spaghetti running on all over the top of each other. So I just kind of broke it up into 3 chunks like that. So the last chunk here, we have the L temple, which I didn't need keyframes for. So this is the setup for that. Same thing with the L beard low. I was getting lucky with all of this. I just found a transform position that worked for all of the frames, which is beautiful. Forehead high. I did unfortunately have to add, I think, 1 keyframe. Oh yeah, just at the very beginning from here to here. And that's for the X position because when I'm looking over to the right completely, just my profile, it just didn't quite line up. So from here to here, when my head starts to turn, then I just move the X position, and then this position stayed throughout the whole thing. I think it was just fine. This really does help with the profile here. And same thing with the low. The low I didn't have to add any keyframes, which is nice, but that's down here. And you can see the nose here and forehead low. I might be able to add keyframes to compensate for that, but I didn't because it's really not that noticeable. And then I also thought, well, maybe if you wanted to use this method to see if you could come in here with everything that you've learned in this video and you can tweak it yourself just as like a course challenge, so you can use these principles to touch it up a bit. But this is what I have, and then I rendered it out into an image sequence. You can do an image sequence, you can do a video, doesn't matter. But now let's take a look at that final result.